Hi everyone, I'm trying this for the first time and it's a lecture on video, so I'm hopefully putting it up into YouTube and you'll get a chance to see it that way. You'll also get a chance to review it. And then next week I might ask for some feedback about what you actually like, whether you like to come to lectures every now and again face to face, or whether you'd like to have a combination of some lectures online like this with supporting information on Moodle and some questions that will help guide you, or whether you'd like to have just a standard in-class sort of lecture. So one thing I want to talk to you today is about GST and sport. And you may or may not recall that GST was introduced back in 2000. Now prior to that, sport was considered to be a bit of a charity organisation, and so they didn't have to put in tax returns and things like that, unless of course you were a corporate sport. But once GST came in, then sports had to be registered so that they could claim GST credits. Now, what you'd be interested to find out is that GST actually corresponds to all sponsorship, grants, as well as services that a sporting organisation might receive. Now, when GST first came in, the biggest thing that sports had to worry about was whether or not they could claim credits through membership. So what they were doing was increasing the amount of a membership fee to their members and then claiming credits that way. So because there was heavy fines attached to anybody who increased services and fees dramatically to accommodate GST, no one did it in the first couple of years and they just sucked up those extra costs. Now what you'll find though is that every time you do pay a membership fee or registration fee, it's considered to be a service and so a GST is attached to it. With sponsorship, that too attracts a GST component. And even if you receive contra sponsorship, that means you receive a good or services without the exchange of money, it still does have a GST component to it, which is of course 11%, and it has been since its introduction. In addition to that, if you get a grant from a grant organisation, whether it be government or an independent body, you are subject to GST as well. Most grants though that are received from government organisations do actually have the GST included in it. So what they do is if they're going to give you $50,000, they include another $5,000 on top of that so that you still have the full amount that you actually requested. Online, what I've done for you is given you examples of how to work GST out. What you can't do is keep carrying forward a GST amount from one to the other. So it's the final value is the amount that the GST is actually paid on, and so it can't be accumulated over a great period of time. Let me just see, I'm sure there's something else that I want to tell you that's pretty important to start off with. I've given you some examples. You will find, of course, that GST is not subject to things like basic foodstuffs and health and medical care and education. These are seen as essential items. Now, when I say foodstuffs, you know that if it's mass produced, so it's things like biscuits and cooked chicken and takeaway food, yes, that does have a GST component, but if it's fresh produce, it doesn't. I'm sure there's something else here that I wanted to talk to you about. I want to move on to budgets eventually, because you do need to prepare a budget along with your strategic plan. So the things that you should be aware of is that they are prepared annually and they are subject to change. So nothing is ever set in concrete. We need to have flexibility when we're dealing with money, dealing with people, and of course outside organisations. A separate budget is drawn up for every single workshop, program, competition, event, athlete training that you might be actually running. So don't ever think that you have one budget that's just very unique and for that whole organisation. You also need to prepare these in line with any sponsorship proposal or grant that you wish to apply for. People want to see a comprehensive budget put with it. And I can tell you from experience that having been on a number of grant selection committees, people who do not submit proper budgets are just overlooked. They're put in a pile that says, well, if we have a little bit of time later on, we'll review those. And in all the years that I've been doing it, that pile has never been looked at because the bulk of the money is used up by people who've written a proper application form. Don't forget that budgets also justify a person's existence or an organisation's existence and shows its viability and its professionalism and the fact that it is actually moving forward. Don't forget that you're actually quite accountable for actually everything that you do. So when you're looking at your strategic plan and developing one for your organisation, think about the budget in terms of dividing it between the programs, the events, the competition and the staff that it has, and look to ensure that the major components of each of those are actually put within the right category. Now, some of you will be able to get lots of information from your host organisation, and others of you will have very, very little. And it doesn't really matter. That's not the key. If you can just get a whole sum, so an annual turnover, and then break it down from that, that'll be sufficient for the purposes of the assignment. Anybody who is having trouble with their host organisation or completing their strategic plan should send me an email well in advance of the deadline for that assignment. Okay, so I'll see you next week. Hope things go well, and please look on Moodle for additional information.